Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of Steelers Stat Geek. This is Behind the Steel Curtain Deputy Editor Dave Schofield coming at you with another geeky show with his super geeky brother, as always. Rich, how's it going this evening?
Graduated from geeky to super geeky.
Nice. Yep. I couldn't help it. Okay. It is what it is. So, things are right. Things are good. You ready to talk some Steelers? Get back into the swing of things?
Of course. You know, with so little going on in sports right now, I found myself last night flipping back and forth on Fox Sports 1 watching the U.S. women's soccer team in the 2015 semifinals of the World Cup and switching back and forth to the Golf Channel watching the 1999, I believe it was, PGA Championship.
Oh my goodness. I don't know that I could do that. I just have to kind of step away from sports altogether.
I was needing to just do something to shut the mind down so I could go to sleep, and that's what I got into.
There you go. Well, I don't want to keep him waiting. We have a special guest tonight.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. We have Behind the Steel Curtain's Michael Beck. Michael, do you have us? Can you hear us?
Oh, I hear you loud and clear.
All right. Now, for those of you who are listening to this on podcast form, you probably are familiar with Michael already because he debuted his show last week, the Live Mic. Is that correct? The Live
Correct.
Mic?
You got it.
All right. And even before that, for those of you who heard us plug this on the show, he is also who had the interview with Chase Claypool that was out just after the draft. So Michael is a writer at Behind the Steel Curtain, and he's starting into the audio format of the podcast, which can be found where all our podcasts are, either on the website or anywhere you listen to Behind the Steel Curtain podcast. He's just not currently doing the shows live on YouTube at this time, like us. But we wanted to introduce him to the YouTube audience. So, Michael, tell us anything you want to tell us about yourself. The most important thing being, how in the world did you end up being a Steeler fan?
All right. So getting to that, I would say it was about probably kindergarten or grade one. I know I wrote something kind of just roughly about how wanting to hear stories from everyone, how they became fans. So I did share this before, but we were just a rough house game of touch football, just a bunch of like 6-year-olds running around. And of course, I get a little overexcited and put my shoulder down into someone and end up getting in a little bit of trouble. But a good friend of mine compared me to Jerome the Bus Bettis. And like, what a comparison, you know? So I rushed home. I watched all that film. I absolutely fell in love, and I've been bleeding black and gold ever since. But other than that, after really watching that, football has just became a part of my life. I played through high school and through college. And then once that came to a conclusion, I really wanted to kind of create some sort of content, and I went to journalism school. And what better way to get into this world than reporting on the team that I love most. So that's how I got into this.
Fantastic. Now, it's important to say you needed to adopt an NFL team because you don't have one in your country. Correct.
Correct.
That's which we have to get to, meaning because this is also the same country we are talking about as the newest hyped rookie Steeler, Chase Claypool, who you got to do the interview because you actually know Chase Claypool, correct?
Correct. It honestly kind of just worked out really weird watching the draft. Chase, believe it or not, was someone that shared a trainer with for a number of years. Of course, not quite as athletic, not quite as tall, not quite as fast, but we'll forget about that. But yeah, so watching the draft, his name pops up for the Steelers, and my mind almost exploded. I wanted to throw him in mock drafts, but just kind of like that bias, so I kind of left it alone. So when his name gets called, just absolutely freak out. My trainer, who was at the draft party, sends me a text like, "Hey, do you want to talk to Chase?" It's like, "Of course I do." So next night in training, just came out and spoke to him. But yeah, both of us come from Vancouver. He's a little bit further outside, but kind of met in the middle to take care of that.
That's fantastic. That's good stuff. And we're really happy to have you here at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. You're constantly churning out some really great stuff. And what's great is we're always looking for different perspectives. And it's funny because if you just heard the same story from each writer, it's not going to give you very much. We've had most of the writers on the show. We still got some more to go, but we like to bring them in there because sometimes our YouTube audience and our podcast, the people that listen to the podcast, don't always necessarily check out the website. So part of what we're doing is making sure that we're introducing the listeners to the writers, so therefore they have that connection when they go to read their stuff. Now, I know you had a very popular article today about asking if it's kind of inevitable that down the road, if there's about the Steelers being able to land
Big Brother Watt,
JJ, adding JJ Watt to the team eventually. Towards
that was a good story. I read it.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying towards the end of his career because I mean he's significantly older than young TJ. Does have 2 more years on his contract, but it wouldn't be surprising to see all 3 of the brothers end up in the same place because that would be nice for them. And what better place than Pittsburgh since there's already 2 of them there. So that was interesting. I read your Cam Newton article. I can't say this is great, but can't say that I completely agree with it. Let's just say this. I could see it from exactly where you laid it out was great from the Steelers standpoint. I don't see Cam Newton wanting to do that because he's got some people are like, well, he's just like Winston. Maybe he'll take that cheap deal. Now, he's 5 years older than Winston. He actually, I think his birthday's today. Is today the 11th?
It's either yesterday.
Oh, yesterday was the 11th.
Yesterday was the 11th. I don't know. That's what happens when you're in quarantine. You can't keep these days straight. But yeah, he just had a birthday, and so he's 5 years older. I'm like, the smartest thing he would do, rather than take a cheap deal, and this could be really good for the Steelers, is he just needs to, if he's the number 1 guy out there, you kind of need to sit back and wait.
Yep.
You just kind of sit back and wait and let something else go down on another team to where you have a better situation to step into. And I'll be honest with you, as long as someone like that is out there, that's better news for the Steelers just in case, because you could have options that you don't have to jump on right now. And I think the Steelers were, I mean, if the reports were true, and I have an article churned in my brain that'll come out sometime about how the XFL, it pretty much hurt the Steelers quarterback situation last year. If the reports were true that they checked into Landry Jones and Josh Johnson, did I get that name right? I think I did. That they checked into those guys, but the XFL wisely did not release them, which the AAF did the year before. And that's part of the reason why they failed, because the NFL didn't give them the players back. So it's funny. When I read that article, I'm like, this is a good idea, but I don't think now's the time. I think this is one of those sit and wait. The Steelers might know right away how, once they're there in person, if there could be more of a problem with Ben. And then I see them making a move like that. So, sorry, Rich, I haven't let you say too much. You want to say anything on the Cam Newton front before we move on?
No, other than I read that story from Michael as well and thought, again, it was well written. I liked the direction you came at that. It was the right direction to come at that story with. I kind of agree with Dave. I would love for this, actually love if the Steelers got a great deal or something like that, but I don't see Cam necessarily jumping for that. Cam's going to sit around, wait and see who, throws out a knee, or something like that, and look, he wants a starting gig.
Yeah, if someone gives him Andy Dalton money, he should take it. But if they're offering Jameis Winston money, you might as well wait to make sure you're going to play. So, we're not telling you what to say. I thought it was a great point, and that's the thing that's great, is we like to talk about different points on here. And I like Rich said, I thought that was very well written. But you're churning out great stuff for the website. We appreciate that.
I'll go on this one. If you ask me who I'd rather have, Jameis Winston or Cam Newton, I'm taking Cam Newton all day. I don't need Winston's interceptions. So if you're talking, hey, maybe he takes similar money, well, why wouldn't you want to go after Cam Newton?
Well, and at the same time, I had an article that I was working on before this one came out, and then it came out, I think maybe the next day, is Mason Rudolph going to get in 2020 what he really needed in 2019? and that is to be the number two.
I've been reading too many articles lately because I read that one too.
To be the number two and to get the number two reps in practice without having to be thrust into it like he was last year, that would be really nice. I mean, that's really what he needs. So, I mean, it's such a flux situation, and we don't have the inside information to it. So, maybe we should get rolling, saying we're 10 minutes into the show and we haven't got to the topic yet. So before we do, Michael.
Yes.
When with your podcast, is it going to be the same time every week or everything? What should we expect with that?
I'm trying to make it weekly or bi-weekly. Okay. I'm trying to get most of the audio into Mr. Hartman by Tuesday, Wednesday night.
You can call him Jefferson. It isn't even really his real name.
On this show, Jefferson. He is known as Jefferson Hartman.
All right. I'll roll with that. So I'll try to get the audio in earlier in the week. What really kind of makes my stuff go is I really want to have some sort of interview with either player, agent, coach, whoever, media member. This week, actually having like kind of all three. Yeah. If I could talk about that quick. We got Skipper, who I spoke with yesterday. Honestly, just a quick blurb about him. What a nice guy to come out of his way to speak with me. Originally, I wanted to do it over Skype. He said he didn't have a Skype account. I was like, whatever, I'll do whatever it takes to just talk to you. He's like, oh, no big deal. I just made one. It's like, oh, thank you. Like, you didn't have to do that. And so just a big shout out to him. He is a really good guy, and I am pulling for him, especially after that. Also talking to Joe Rudder after this ends tonight from Trib Sports. So kind of get his perspective. I'm kind of focusing this episode more so on the outside linebacker position and defense kind of in general after talking with Tuzar. And then the last kind of segment, something I want to roll with, is kind of like our fan spotlight. I want to talk
about the fan spotlight because I really enjoyed that last week.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome. Because I really wanted to just focus on the members of Steelers Nation, especially not necessarily people that just have tons and tons of followers, but people that are involved in conversation a lot and you see them all the time. So I really just kind of wanted to kind of get to know them as fans and how they kind of got to where they are. So every single week I'm looking for someone new to come on, be it just kind of people that I see that are online a lot, or just from asking previous fan spotlights. So I really just wanted to do something a little bit different that you don't normally see and get some of you onto my show.
Yeah, and honestly, if you ever are short on fans, we have great fans in our live chat every show, every night of the week. We have the same people checking in. Now, I don't know how a lot of people that come on here don't necessarily have like a large Twitter following presence there. I know some of them may, but some of them don't. Like, I don't know if you can see the live chat right now, but we have people all over the world in here. Like I see a comment now from Mark Davison coming from Australia, saying how we're worldwide. We just have lots of regulars. So trust me. For those of you, is that your Twitter on the screen, correct?
That's correct. Right at the bottom of the screen there.
Make sure you're giving Michael a follow on Twitter, especially with, Steeler fan stuff, because he's always looking for those Steeler fans and whatnot. Because see, Mark Davison, he has his own Australia. I'm pretty sure Mark is in charge of like a big Steeler fan group in Australia, and he's just saying that in the live chat. So he's interesting. I know the young lady. Yeah.
Hey, you need to actually say Michael's Twitter for our podcast folks.
The podcast people. Yes, I'll get to that.
Okay.
So, but we'll make sure we say that. I'll do it now. It's at Michael Beck 56. So with Michael, that's the regular spelling, the Michael, Michael Beck 56. Were you number 56 in college?
Correct. That's I wore that from the day I started to when I hung the cleats up. So that's
there
just
you
stuck
go.
with me.
So are you going to get a Claypool jersey or are you going to get a Highsmith jersey?
I got to stick with my guy, just knowing Chase. But if he doesn't give it to me, I'm going to be choked. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for, like a jersey swap, except I don't really have anything to give to him. So I'm just expecting him.
You know what? Yeah. Maybe I'll see if we can get you a behind the steel curtain shirt.
There you go.
And give that to Chase Claypool.
That's to Chase Claypool. That's right.
See if he can wear that when he's walking in or out of the stadium or something. Ooh, that'd be great.
I'll try to set something up. We'll see.
I got to talk to Jeff. Yeah, we got to get that to you. All right, so let's dive in here. I know I'm getting kind of sidetracked, but I'm just here talking, having fun. So we're going through draft pick by draft pick, looking at the numbers based on each pick. We did Chase Claypool. I threw some numbers out there. There were averages of other rookie Steeler receivers recently. Last week was Alex Highsmith. And then shockingly, Michael does an article projecting the stats for all the rookies this year. And what do you know? I had projected for Alex Highsmith 20 tackles, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and 1 pass defensed. The only difference in Michael's article and my prediction was actually throwing in the stat of pass defense. We had the same stat line, and that was absolutely crazy because you didn't know that I had done that. I didn't know you had written that up, and it worked out that way. So,
and if he gets that, I would call that a very successful rookie season for him.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'll ask both you guys this, since Rich, you weren't on for this part of the show last week, and Michael, you're here. For Highsmith, I say if he's taking over that Chickalo role, I projected him, because this is another thing I'm going to do with McFarland, is I projected Highsmith to get between 200 and 250 snaps on defense this year. And that's what I based that production off of, because it was all about last year. It was, I think, 227 snaps between all the outside linebackers that were in reserve that weren't TJ Watt and Bud Dupree. Now, if there's an injury, of course, he has a chance to get more. But I think that would be a pretty productive year. So now let's look at Anthony McFarland, which was – so we'll ask Michael this, since I kind of know Rich's idea, because he was on live with me when he was drafted, weren't you, Rich?
Yes.
Was that the one, or were you on? I'm trying to remember. No, you were on for the other Maryland pick.
Yes.
You were on.
I came on and you asked me to go through what I thought of the draft so far.
Yeah.
And so I shared what I thought of each pick. So
yes, that I remember now. It's all blurring together. That was a crazy weekend. But I was on live with YouTube whenever that pick was made, and I had my knee-jerk reaction. Michael? What was your initial thought to them drafting McFarland when they did?
I was at first, I wasn't too high on the position, but then knowing his history with Matt Canada and like Mike Tomlin's son, that's kind of like they know something here. There's something going on more to the player, especially I saw that game when he just absolutely went off against Ohio State. So
yeah,
he just has that, like, that ability to be a game breaker, and he's different from every back that I kind of foresee making the final, I guess it's 55-man roster this year. So I think he could be
it's technically still a 53-man roster, but they can borrow 2 people off the practice squad. So they have to get down to 53 at the end of each week, but then they can kind of steal 2 off of that practice squad.
And not make them start 3 weeks or whatever it is. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yep. So sorry, just for those people out there that were wondering how that works. So, okay, sorry. So continue. So
yeah, no, I was just saying he's a different back. Like I'm not one that's super high on Kareth White. I love that kind of explosiveness he showed last year, but I kind of see that role ending up kind of being more McFarland's plate. And then with the introduction of Matt Canada, who it seems from stuff I read will have kind of a more kind of, I don't know the best way to put it, but I think he'll be more involved in creating the offensive game plans a little bit than just a regular quarterback coach, just kind of using his kind of jet sweeps and his creativity. So I think he's someone that could be used in those roles a little bit more. So all in all, I did like the pick. I really like this entire draft, to be honest with you. Just kind of, yeah.
This is the one that I'm most concerned about. Now, for those of you who might have joined us late, this is Michael Beck. He is a writer for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and he is doing audio podcasts on our podcast platform, the Live Mic. So make sure you're checking those out. My biggest concern with this pick was I had said it before the draft. I'm not set on the Steelers taking a running back. I don't think they need to. I felt they were deeper at that position than plenty of other positions. So there were so many people that said they had to go running back. I'm like, they don't have to. They could not even address the position if they chose not to. But my position was, if you're going to do it high and do an upgrade. And that's the biggest reason I didn't initially like this pick at all, because I felt if they weren't going to have a running back in day 2, then how much of an upgrade was it going to be? And so I initially really didn't like it. Then I looked into the pick. I looked at that 2018 Ohio State game, and you're like, how could you not think that this guy could really be something? I looked at how he could have possibly, because of injury last year, been more overlooked and should have been drafted higher. But then I also am still torn, because I feel like they did upgrade the running back position, but they upgraded their 4th string running back. I feel that he's more of the same cloth not the same cloth, but if you're going to compare him to anyone else already on the Steelers running back depth chart, it would be Kareth White, who to me was number 4 on the chart. So you upgraded your 4th string running back. I would have said, if you're going to do it, go big, or just not even bother. But they took a chance. So this is my most wishy-washy pick of the whole draft. I think he has a potential to just bust out, but I think he has a potential to bust out, if you know what I mean, where he could turn into a bust. I think he's got a wide spectrum of what he could be. Rich.
Hey, Dave, quick question.
A
quick question for you on him. You think we're going to see him returning kickoffs?
That's a great question. I really don't know. I mean, is that something that you know of, Michael, that's in his repertoire or anything? Or you think they might just give him a shot with it?
I haven't really seen too much of that out of him, but I think kickoffs would be a really good spot, actually. I think Deontay's kind of honed into that punt returning role. I think he did an amazing job last year, but of course, all pro. But, that kicker returning spot, I think, would be a real good kind of side piece for him.
Yeah, that's a good question, Rich. That I don't know if he can, but I'm like, why not give him a shot?
Either,
see
but,
if he can.
With the speed and
yeah,
I'd like to think that they would use something like that if they, we took the guy and we kind of questioned where he'd fall in the depth chart. I mean, you kind of want to get a guy in that pick, out on the field if you can, and if the spot for it is more time playing, maybe in the kick returner, I would hope that Coach Tomlin and the other, special teams coaches would take a look at that and think about it.
If I had to guess right now, I would say they're going to probably give him a chance to see if he can do it, but they're not banking on him doing it because they haven't really seen it before. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I don't know that he did that in college. So the big thing is what do we expect out of him his rookie year? What is there really to look? I mean, what would you call a good rookie year? What should Steeler fans expect this year? Rich, we'll let you go first this time. You don't have to give specific numbers, but just
I'm actually thinking numbers. If he got 25, 30 carries for a couple, 225 maybe, I'd say, hey, they're breaking him in slow, but he showed some ability to run. Would be nice if they could get him in here or there. Would like to see if he's got any of that big play ability, which is kind of what we've been missing a little bit. And I'm thinking that was kind of the thought in taking him, that he has some of that big play ability in him. Yeah. Oh.
I was going to say, I cannot verify this myself because, like I said, I haven't gone back and watched that part of any tape. But Blitzberg says McFarland did return kicks at Maryland. That is not something that was part of his game that I looked into one bit. So maybe that could also, I mean, when you're a rookie and you're not going to be asked to come in and carry the load, that's a way for you to go out and show and make a name for yourself. So, I mean, that's how, Deontay Johnson was second team All Pro as a punt returner. That's how Antonio Brown, or Mr. Third and Fifth, as we like to call him on this show, how he first made the Pro Bowl was as a punt returner. So sometimes those are some good chances to get your name out there. So, Michael, what do you think when you did your article and everything else? What kind of where did you have McFarland fitting in?
So I really try to base my stats kind of on what guys have done on this team with the guys around him in years prior. So I think if he can show, because Kareth White kind of exploded in like that little six, and I use that fairly loosely. In that 6-game window, I believe he had 120 yards, and he had the highest yards per carry of any of the running backs on the roster. If he could show that for 16 games and sit somewhere around 300 yards, which was the number I threw out there, I think that would be quite successful, just kind of based on not really having the rookie mini camp. Like this whole offseason is going to be weird. I'm not expecting anything major from the rookies, and that's okay. I think we can't really evaluate this draft class after 1 year. It's just not fair for them. But I think a good season would just kind of be that Kareth White production, but 16 games.
All right. I could see that. Here's the thing that's interesting. I actually, of course, you guys, anyone who's been following the show for the last couple of weeks, what do? I dive back into Steeler history and how much do the Steelers use their running backs as rookies. I went back. I just looked at I even went beyond the Tomlin era. I went back to the Kevin Colbert era since 2000. Out of all rookie running backs, well, this isn't just rookie running backs. It's just rookies, period. The one with the most yards was the one by far the most attempts, was Le'Veon Bell, who played in 13 games and started all 13 of those games as a rookie. He missed the first 3 games of the season due to injury. That was the year the Steelers went 0-4. His first game was that game in London against the Vikings, was Bell's first game as a rookie. And he had 860 yards rushing on 244 carries. He is one of only 2 Steeler rookie running backs in the Kevin Colbert era to have triple-digit rushing attempts their rookie season. Le'Veon Bell had 244 as a rookie. Do you have any idea who the other one is? Had over 100 carries as a rookie. We've got
Mendenhall?
Yeah, Mendenhall.
Got a guess of a Mendenhall in the live chat, and you all say Mendenhall. The answer would be one Benjamin Snell Jr. with 108 last year.
Huh.
And he has by far the second most rushing yards of any rookie since 2000 with his 426. Granted, that is just almost exactly half of what Bell did. But it was also in less than half the carries. Yeah.
So that's Lance.
Yeah, because he's decided he didn't like Benny Snell no matter what he does before he even touched a football in a regular season game.
Sure.
But anyway.
But we did get him to admit that you have to give rookies 3 years to try to prove themselves, even though he doesn't give anybody 3 years.
Yes. So I think that's interesting. Some people have really written off Benny Snell. He did more as a rookie than most Steeler rookie running backs. Now, what's interesting is they're like, oh, well, that's because Connor missed 6 games and Bell. Snell only started 2 of those games. And there was a couple of those games where neither of them were available. They were both out at the same time. So Snell did much better when he was given more carries. That's obvious. Everyone could see that. I've talked about that, all the crazy numbers with that in the past, so I won't dive into it too much there.
Hey, I want to recognize something out there. I don't want you to pull it up, but it's something out there on the live chat. Hey, Thaddeus Kennedy, I noticed what you said out there. The quick question for Dave. We're going to hold on to that one. The question you ask on there is actually something I'd been thinking about, and we might have to make that a topic for one of our second Q&A shows.
The thing about the
7 playoffs. Yep.
Yes, that is we. You know what? Help me remember. That's next week's Q&A.
Okay.
Because that's a good one.
Sorry, I keep an eye over
just
there.
To preview it
that struck me. I was like, wow, that's a really good question for a couple of numbers geeks.
For those of you listening in podcast, he was saying, hey, if there's 3 wild card teams, what are the chances of an entire division making the playoffs? So we'll go back and we'll look at that, and see how that would go. So the thing is, when I look at this, the breakdown of the rookies for the Steelers, I mean, what's funny is the Steelers have drafted a rookie, they've drafted a running back in each of the last 4 drafts. When you look at the yards rushing by those rookies, they are 4 of the top 5 rushing yards since 2000, with Well, no, wait, they're not. I said the wrong thing.
Yeah, you did.
It's three of the last four because I can't count McFarland yet. Because, of course, I started to count Le'Veon Bell, which he doesn't count. So, but I mean, Bell is 1, Snell is 2. Believe it or not, Samuels has the third most rushing yards of a rookie running back because he had that big game against New England when he had the 140 some yards, which was over half of his total for his rookie year. Then it was Willie Parker, and then James Conner. But what's funny is James Conner had 144 rushing yards his rookie year. You know who else had exactly 144 rushing yards their rookie year? That would be in 2004, one Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger. So James Conner and Ben Roethlisberger both had the same amount of rushing yards as a rookie in the NFL. So there's an interesting bit of trivia. But Rashard Mendenhall he only played 4 games his rookie year. He only had 58 yards.
He was injured. Wasn't serious? Was it hamstring or I can't remember?
I can't remember exactly what it was, unless for some reason Pro Football Reference has it screwed up. But that seems to sound familiar to me. So I think the biggest thing when it comes to McFarland is he going to get the carries? Everything that I'm judging him off of is I'm saying I think he can do similar to the Kareth White. I think he can average the 5 yards a carry. The question is going to be how many carries he gets.
Yep.
So I think if he gets 25 carries, then he can get 250 yards. If he gets 30 carries, then you're looking at 300 yards. So I don't think the biggest question with him is going to be now if he's not getting close to that 5 yards per average. And the reason I say there's a good average is because he's the kind of guy that's going to get a no gain, a 2-yard loss, a 3-yard run, a no gain, and then a 36-yard run. That's the kind of stuff I would look to see from him as much as anything. What do you guys think? Do you think that's fairly accurate?
Yeah, I do. I see him getting, like I said, I threw out that 25 carries. I see it somewhere between 25 and 45. But again, you can throw all those numbers out the windows if we start getting guys injured or anything like that. Kind of like Benny Snell last year suddenly got more carries probably than we were expecting him to have.
I think it kind of rests on the shoulders of what Ben really wants to do because, of course, he loves throwing the ball. He never wants to hand it off. But if his elbow is starting to hurt, I think 2 carries a game is pretty reasonable, and that would be 32 in the year. So I think we could see something like that. If he averaged 2-3 carries a game, I think that'd be a pretty reasonable rookie year for Mr. McFarland.
Yeah, which I think is interesting because we were asking the same thing last year in the 4th round about Benny Snell.
Yep.
And it was how many carries is he going to get a game? And that was something we talked about on the Steelers preview and everything. And I mean, with 108 carries, now if you average it over the 16 games, although he didn't play 16 games, I mean, he didn't get 10 carries a game, but he got more than 5, and that's because he had to. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if he's going to be. I mean, if he got there, like I said, there's only been 3 rookies to go since 2000 to get more than 50 carries in a season. And that was Bell, Snell, and Jalen Samuels because they were thrown into duty. I don't think he's going to get thrown into starting duty this year. I think there's going to have to be an awful lot of injuries he's not going to get thrown into it. But unless he completely just comes out and just takes the league by storm with how he's running, he would have to grab that away from somebody else before he's going to get any kind of, starter workload, in my opinion. So what about touchdowns? Do you think he's going to find the end zone?
Jalen Samuels hit pay dirt a couple times, but I don't know. I think that's kind of the comparable. Maybe he has a game where he just breaks out, has two scores. So I can't imagine him getting the goal line touches. Doesn't really make sense for his player type. It's got to be on some sort of long run. That's just kind of what I'm figuring. So 1, 2. I think I might have even said 3 in my article. That's a little ambitious, even thinking that now. But I wouldn't be surprised by 1 or 2, but I wouldn't be surprised by none.
So if I give you the hook and say the over under of 1.5, what do you do?
Well, the other guys ahead of him can't seem to stay healthy, so I'm going to gamble on that and say the over.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Rich?
I'd probably take the same gamble on the thing. I'm going to gamble the fact that you're going to have 4 to 6 games, maybe. Yeah, you could end up 4 to 6 games without Connor potentially, and if that's the case, his chances of making those touchdowns go up.
I'm going to take the under because I think it's going to take him busting a long run, and it's not that he can't. I just don't know how many opportunities he'll have. This will be a good stat to look at when the season's over. Someone's going to have to remind me to do this. How many red zone touches is he going to get, or how many even red zone snaps is he going to get?
Few.
I think it could very well be single digits, which is going to be tough. With Benny Snell last year, it was a whole different story because he was going to be probably the most powerful, more power back of anyone that they had. So he was one of those guys that you thought, oh, wow, he could maybe have more touchdowns, but not as many carries as many yards, where I think McFarland's more of a guy that he could rack up some yards, but just might not get into as Brian Anthony Davis calls it, the touchdown zone. And if I didn't say that, the live chat would have given me a hard time. So we're going to start asking this of all the draft picks now. One last thing about them. Where do they fit on the roster? Is there room for them in the position? And if so, who's not going to make it? I already did a 53-man roster prediction this week with Jeff, so I'll wait till the end and let you guys say, how many running backs do the Steelers keep? Is he one of them? And if so, who isn't going to have a job with the Steelers come week 1? Let's go. Look, Michael, you go ahead and start it.
Yeah, sure. So just thinking of this, I feel like they'll probably carry around neighborhood of 4, not including Derek Watt at fullback. We're not
going to count the fullback.
James Conner for sure. Benny Snell for sure. You rarely see a 4th round pick getting cut. So I think McFarland's in that mix. That last spot is going to be, I think, between Kareth White and Jalen Samuels. And I wouldn't be surprised if Samuels got the boot. I wouldn't be surprised if they carried 3, but I don't know if you can necessarily trust the health of the other guys. So I think they go with 4, and I think it's going to be White, surprisingly, Connor, Snell, and McFarland.
All right, Rich.
I agree with the fact that we're going with 4. Tough call for me. I again thinking it comes down probably to Samuels and White. And I'm probably going with Samuels on this one, only because I feel McFarland plays the kind of game that White does. We don't need 2 of them.
That's a very good point. I see, because I'm always a numbers guy when it comes to the roster. Like, they need this number of guys at this position and that position and the other position. And if you're going to change that, it's got to go somewhere else. For example, I always chalk in my head 9 linebackers. It all depends on how many inside versus how many outside and things like that. 10 secondary. Are you going to do 6 and 4? Or are you going to do 5 and 5? Running backs had always been a 3 running back and 1 fullback is how they had always been. That's what they did to start last year. I don't think they're going to do that this year. By the end of the year last year, now granted they didn't have the fullback, but they had 5 running backs on the team and they dressed them all. So you could count Trey Edmonds more as the fullback because he did line up in that role sometimes. So if you even wanted to take him and count him as that he was really the fullback, they were still had 4 others on the roster and dressed them all. So this is the year I think they're going to keep 4. I was talking to Jefferson about this, and I'm like, what do you think? They only go 5 wide receivers? Do you think they only go 8 linemen? My thought is they might only just go with 8 linemen, knowing that they can have guys on the practice squad that they can bring up and fill in to be that 8th lineman if they need it, that they might not keep them. Last year they kept so many just because they didn't want other teams to take them, because as soon as they were exposed, they were gone. So I think they're going to go with 4, and kind of like what Rich said, as much as I like Kareth White, and what he did last year, I think McFarland is very similar and was the upgrade over it. I also like Kareth White as a candidate that if someone else doesn't grab him, that you could try to put on the practice squad. And then if people get injured, that's a guy that could then come up. I don't know if that's someone they can get there or not. It might be that Steeler fans value him much more of him being their own, more than what other people would value him. But wouldn't be shocked if the Bears stole him back, if you know what I mean.
I don't know what training camps are going to look like, but if we're talking just regular type training camps, this is going to be a huge training camp battle.
Yeah,
I would say it's going to come down to who's showing more at camp, Samuels or White, and that's probably where the decision will be made. It will be a true camp battle.
Yeah, and I mean, and look, Samuels missed time getting his knee scoped last year, as Blitzberg brings up in the live chat. Snell got his knee scoped and missed time last year. Connor just missed time last year. The stat that I've thrown out all the time is 20 of the 32 NFL teams last year, their leading rusher did not play in every game. 20 out of 32. So only 12 teams had their leading rusher play in 16 games. So, and they were all due to injury with, like I said, with the one exception, you could try to make the argument for Mark Ingram for the Ravens that they rested him, but he could barely play in that playoff game 2 weeks later. So there was no way he was playing in week 17 because of injury. So guys are going to miss. It's what's going to happen. And they, you still got, I'm going to say the wrong name. It's Ralph Webb. Or is it Frank Webb? I can't remember, because for those of you in the live chat, you'll get it right. You've got someone like that who was on the practice squad that the Steelers still have. And you've got Edmonds. It's just going to be interesting. There could very well be an injury before the season starts, which could also help. You don't want to say help clear this up, because you never want to see that. You don't want that kind of help, but it could assist in making the decision if we could put it that way. So that's interesting. You're right. It's very rare that the Steelers part ways with a 4th round draft pick. 4th round picks are generally the tipping point. Those are pretty much where you can all but guarantee they're going to make the roster unless they really screw it up. If it's a 3rd round pick, even if they're pretty bad, you're generally going to still see the team keep them at least to start, or find a way to put them on IR and then see if they develop over the next year. I think he's the biggest wild card of any of the rookies. I really do. I think he could come out and explode, or I think he could just get lost in the room. So I'm kind of excited to see what's going to happen. So, and any final thoughts here on McFarland, Michael?
I think with most of this draft class, a player to be excited about down the road, he could be the guy that takes over for Connor. If this is his last season, that he could be the lead feature back in 2021. So I think this could be a guy. So I would make sure to just remember him, even if he doesn't get those touches. He could be someone that in year 2 is really like that. I don't know. Premier might be a little pressure to be putting on him, but he could be that number 1 guy for this team years from now. This year could just kind of be a stopgap, just kind of see what happens. But I think the future is bright with McFarland.
All right, Rich, any final thoughts?
Yeah, kind of like where Michael's going there. The fact that when the Steelers made this pick, the more I thought about it, I got to thinking, hey, they might think that this guy has the potential to be a number 1 back. We can get him here. We don't have to thrust him right into the number 1 back role. We'll have the time to see how he's developing, and hopefully, going into next season, then they would have a much better idea. Is this a guy who can carry the load, or are we going to have to go elsewhere?
I think that's a good point. I also would not be surprised if he gets quote unquote dinged up in the preseason and they decide to maybe even have him as someone on IR, possibly to return or not, not just out of nowhere, but I'm like, because a lot running backs get dinged up all the time. So if a rookie running back has that happen, he could maybe be a candidate for that, because if the other guys are all playing well early on, and it could be very much like a perfect scenario that we talked about last year with Justin Lane, the cornerback. They were like, the best thing that could happen to him is for him to not have to play any defensive snaps as a rookie. And he played 0 defensive snaps. And he took that special teams job away from Artie Burns to where he got the helmet on game day at the end of the season and not Burns. So I could see McFarland saying, you know what, you don't have to be a big part of the game plan this year, depending on stuff. And it doesn't have to be because of IR or anything, but to more or less say, you know, almost like a red shirt year is not a terrible thing for some of these guys if you don't have to call on them. But maybe that might not be the case either. Also, one other thing that I meant to say before is if we're going to take Matt Canada into consideration, you can't also forget the whole Matt Canada effect with both James Conner, who he coached, and Jalen Samuels, who he coached in college. So that's 3 backs right there. So it's hard to say how it's going to all work out. But Michael, we want to thank you so much for jumping on with us. I know you've got to get going to your interview for your podcast, which will be available later this week. If you don't know, you've look for all of these shows from BehindTheSteelCurtain.com on any podcast forum that you can find up. There are articles each morning about the podcast where you can listen to it right there on the website. Lots of good stuff coming. We've got our live YouTube shows, at least one every day, with Jeff and Lance coming back with the standard tomorrow night. The Steelers preview with myself, Brian Anthony Davis, and Jeff Hartman on Thursday. Lance's, I said it, Friday. Tony's new show. He's going into show 3 on Saturday, right around noontime of Brunch Time with Tony. Sunday, you've got the Homer and the Hater show, which is usually Jeff and Lance. Brian sat in on this one this past Sunday. It was pretty interesting. And then you got Brian and Tony on Monday.
I didn't see that one. Was he the Homer or the Hater?
He was supposed to be the hater, but I mean,
it's Brian.
It's Brian. His initials might be bad, but he hasn't lived up to that yet.
Yeah.
So then you have Tony and Brian's Q&A on Mondays. That's usually between 5 and 5:30. And then, of course, we've got Michael's podcast that you can catch whenever it comes out. Before we go, we did get $5 in as a super chat from Just Me. Isn't a comment there. Just Me, if you have a comment, I will bring up your first comment in the next show, because Rich and Michael's got to go to his interview. We'll be coming back with another show talking about the schedule with the Q&A, and we'll be taking your questions here in about 5 minutes. Make sure you're checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. Great stuff. We've had guests of almost all the writers. We're trying to get to them all, but Michael's on there quite often. We get our Cliff Harris is still a punk, Kevin Smith articles that really dive deep. We've had Flip on in the past. We have Jeffrey Benedict with lots of great stuff out there. Myself, Jeff Hartman, Brian Anthony Davis, Tony Defio, all of us contributing to the site. Michael, thanks for coming. Anything you want to say to everyone before we go?
My pleasure. Not to just completely plug my own account, but if I cannot find you, you cannot be on the fan spotlight. So if you go ahead, follow me on Twitter, I'll probably follow you back. I'll look at your feed. If it's trash, I might not follow you back. I'm sorry, but I probably will. But yeah, so go ahead, check out the new show. I'm super excited about it. Really excited about some great interviews coming up. And thank you guys for having me on. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. Michael Beck 56. Make sure you find him on Twitter. Michael, you'll probably learn real quick. You're like me. It's all Steelers on Twitter. If you want to talk about other stuff, then I'm done with you. I don't follow you anymore. So Steelers is the way to go. So if you want your Steelers stuff, make sure you're following Michael. Thanks for joining us. And as we always say, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Thanks for geeking out with us.